The bomb, the cutting edge of geekdom. Comics, advice, D&D. Movies, video games, RPGs. Finding it's easy, just stay calm. VorpalNetwork.com.
This episode of The Tome Show is brought to you by Noble Knight, where Out of Print is available again, and listeners like you. Thanks for using The Tome's Amazon and D&D Classics affiliate links.
Hey, this is Mike Merles, lead developer of 4th Edition, and you're listening to The Tome.
Welcome to The Tome, a D&D news, reviews, and interview show, and I'm your Tome host, Jeff Greiner.
And I'm Tracy Hurley, and in this episode, number 240, we're going to get things started right with the first product of the 5th edition of D&D, the starter set.
Oh, there's no, enthusiasm in that, Tracy. We're going to get this started right, yo! Let's go! It's a new edition!
It might have been running already having run 5 sessions of the starter set, at least the very first part, 4 times.
Well, we wanted to make sure you had a really good opportunity to get a feel for it before you reviewed it.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah. And joining us in this episode, speaking of people who are perfect reviewers, our senior editor, Sam Dillon.
Yay. Hello.
And one of the hosts of the Behind the DM Screen podcast, Mike Shea.
Hello.
We plan to bring...
Far from perfect.
The Behind the DM Screen is not really about perfection. It's not our thing.
If you want perfection, visit slyflourish.com/book.
Ooh.
Yes.
There you go. We plan to try to bring this whole team back. I don't know if I mentioned that to you guys. But we're going to plan to bring you guys back along with James Intricaso from the Roundtable, who couldn't join us today because he hasn't read the starter set because he's playing in one of Mike's games of it and didn't want to read ahead for the spoilers.
What a nice guy.
Right? But so the plan is to bring all 5 of us back for each of the core books over the next few months to examine the new edition of the world's most popular role-playing game here on the world's best D&D podcast.
Awesome.
Sweet.
I'm game.
Yeah, I'm in.
Awesome. But before we get started on this, we should remind you about our most supportive sponsor ever, Noble Knight. They're great, they provide a great service, and they have said nothing but nice things about us. All thanks to the fact that you guys keep mentioning us when you shop at Noble Knight. So big thanks to you guys as well. And our pick for the episode is, of course, the starter set. So let's get into it, and if you like, find a link in the show notes to buy it on Noble Knight.
Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, even Saturday. Noble Knight is a brick-and-mortar game store. Support small businesses. That also exists online. Open 24/7 on the web. They have D&D and other cool RPGs. Any edition, any game. Even out-of-print products. And at a discounted price. That's out of control! Have a bunch of old game products collecting dust? Dangerous allergens! Noble Knight will buy the old stuff you aren't using anymore. Looking at you, Indiana Jones RPG! So go to nobleknight.com and get buying and selling. Take back your lie and tell them the Tome Show sent you.
All right, let's get into this. Who wants to start off by telling us what the starter set is? It's not a player's handbook, it's not a DMG, it's not a monster manual. It's this weird other thing that's kind of the core, but kind of not the core.
It's not that weird.
Mike, what is the starter set?
No!
Tracy, what is the starter set?
It's the set...
Well, let me tell you, Jeff. Oh, sorry.
I'll let you finish in a moment. But it's the set at which you start.
Oh, that is weird.
Wow.
Now, Mike, did you want to explain what the starter set is?
Well, I mean, I don't find it that weird because it seems to be sort of the core product for D&D. It is, as far as many people are concerned, Dungeons & Dragons in the box. So it's the one set that contains and I'm almost reading like the blurb on the back of the box. The one set that contains everything you need in order to sit down and actually play Dungeons and Dragons.
And that's true, I think, as long as you don't want to build anything for yourself.
I disagree.
There's no monsters.
Yes, there is.
Outside of the ones that are used in that specific adventure.
Which is a lot of monsters.
Which is a
But they
decent
don't
number.
have descriptions.
And there's no character creation, so you have to use their pre-gens.
Yes, that's true.
Although with basic D&D available for free on their website, you can do character creation there.
Right.
And I also know that technically you don't need graph paper to play, but I've seen quite a few people online complain about that there are no minis at all, no tokens.
Yeah, well, that's a whole topic.
Yeah, that I don't feel like that's needed. I think Mike, I think your description is right on. This, I mean, you could, and I think that's the point of the product. You can throw this box at somebody. It's $20 or less, depending on where you buy it. You can throw this box at somebody and say, "This is what D&D is. Read these things, play through this stuff, and it'll teach you what D&D is all about. And then if you're interested, here's all this other stuff out there." Which right now, this gets all the focus because that other stuff isn't out there yet, right? The Player's Handbook hasn't released, the DMG hasn't released, the Monster Manual doesn't release, so.
Right. Yeah, and in a year, it's going to be a totally different playing field, right? Like, we're paying a lot of attention to the way it is right now, where this is the only product you can walk into a store and buy that's part of D&D 5th edition. But that environment is going to be very different in a year because they're going to have not only the core books, they're going to have, we can assume, a slew of products, and this will be one of them.
Have we heard, do they intend on keeping the starter set available in perpetuity?
They said that with the other stuff, though, and it wasn't. So,
I mean, that
if they did, would we believe them?
Well,
let's put it this way. I think it will be in print as long as this edition is the current edition.
I don't even know that I go that far.
Yeah,
I would say this will
either.
be in print as long as it makes financial sense for them to keep printing it.
As long as people keep
But see, I think it's meant to be a lost leader in the first place.
No. And I think it can be, but that's still.
Do you think it is a lost leader?
It still financially makes sense.
Well, I think right now it's not a lost leader because it's the only thing making them money. But I think once the focus moves to the core, this is going to be the sort of, it doesn't matter if they make money on it. The point of it is to get people in to buy this product, to get them to then further buy the core.
I think if they lose $2 on every box that they sell, then they would keep.
I don't
publishing
think
it.
they're losing
because they're.
I don't think they're.
No,
losing.
I don't think they are either. But I think if they were losing $2 on every box that they sell, they would keep publishing it. But if it got as high as $5 or whatever, then maybe they would stop. Or the sales just weren't big enough to justify another print run or whatever.
Yeah.
They could also sit back, and I think they did this with 4th edition. Didn't 4th edition have 2 different starter sets?
Yep.
So they could get halfway through a cycle.
That's true. They could release.
They could make a new one and say, "Hey, this is a new one that we're creating based on what we've learned."
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, specifically, especially if the game does change as it lives, I could see them doing a different starter set.
Although, spoiler for the rest of what I want to talk about, I really like this one. It's really good. So I would kind of be sad to see it go away, and not be the people, the first experience with D&D. So, let's talk a little bit about what.
Tracy didn't sound like she was
Well,
agreeing.
we'll get into that.
Yeah, I think I'm with Tracy. I'm gonna Let me get a in there because I'm not sure I agree with you.
Okay. So let's talk about what's actually in it. So you got the box that you open it up. It's got the Lost Mine of Phandelver adventure in it. It's got the starter set rulebook with just sort of the quick start rules of the new edition. It's got a handful of pre-gens. How many pre-gens are there?
There's 5.
5 pre-gens on not quite cardstock. Not quite.
Pretty good paper though.
Yeah, it's a relatively thick paper. You've got an ad, but on the back of the ad is a blank character sheet, so you could use it for photocopying and making characters. And then it's got a big chunk of cardboard in it to fill up space because the product only fills up a fraction of the box.
Right. And I think I thought I saw
mention
somewhere that they
dice?
said that was on purpose.
That's certainly their spin.
Yeah, they
Right.
said it was on purpose so that you could print out the basic PDF and throw it in there,
That you
or
could, add all your other materials
throw
in
in pencils and extra
Yeah.
paper and all that kind of stuff, and just have it in one box.
I think that's spin though, because I think it's just an issue of boxes come in relatively standard sizes, and if you try to pick something more custom, then it's probably more expensive.
It may be spin, but I actually did that. Like I ran a game at a local store here last weekend, and I threw in my Ziploc bag full of tokens from the D&D Monster Vault, a Paizo flip mat, some more dice, some minis, and I threw it all in the box and just took the box with me.
Well, people have been doing this in second edition, right?
And further, I would rather have it be this awesome, thick cardstock box than one of those crappy Madness at Gardmore Abbey boxes, or those sleeves that they used for like Monsters of Ninter Vale.
Which I just threw away.
Which just go in the garbage. So this is at least a sturdy box. It'll look nice on your shelf. Yeah. It'll stay relatively in decent condition for at least a couple of years. Sure. As long as you're not dropping it in puddles and stuff.
And Mike brought up about the dice too.
Yeah, did you guys mention that it has dice? Yeah,
I did not mention the dice because I've already taken them out of the box, so I forgot that they were in there.
Yeah, they're not bad. I like them. Mm-hmm. I mean, we could sit here and review dice, but they're not. They don't feel like the cheapest dice you could possibly get.
They're all right.
I mean, they're passable dice.
They're pretty marble.
There's only one
dice.
D10.
Yeah, that's the one thing I've heard.
Oh, yeah, so you can't do percentiles when there's a lot of percentile stuff in the game, right?
It tells you in the book to do percentile, you got to roll that D10 twice. Right. It actually has a paragraph of explanation.
Yeah, it does describe that.
Yeah, it does.
And honestly, I hate the 10 dice. I don't actually
like that.
Oh, I hate them. The die that's 10 through 90 or whatever, 0 through 90. They bug me.
I mean, whatever. It's it's dice or dice. Most gamers, or maybe I don't want to say one.
It includes dice.
Maybe not in most, but lots of gamers, they end up having their own special dice anyway. So that's okay. It includes dice for people who don't have them, or maybe have never thought about buying them or whatever. And so it's necessary, and it works.
And remembering the intended future audience, like I think the current audience of the product is everybody who wants to see what 5th edition's all about. But the future audience is anybody who's interested in getting into D&D and can pick up the box at a game. Right. Or the game in a box. That's what I meant to say. Mm-hmm. In which case you need the dice. So since we're talking materials, maybe we'll save the pre-gens for when we talk about the adventure, if it comes up as being relevant there. Are there any other material sorts of things we want to talk about, or shall we discuss?
No, I wish that they would put a heavier cardstock page on the front of the...
Yeah, that'd be nice.
The booklets? Yep.
Yeah, they're more like magazine pages, the thick magazine pages, which are better than really thin, cheapy pages, but I would rather have a cardstock cover.
Sure.
After running it through the approximately 3 to 4 hour sessions, my book is toast.
Yeah.
Really? Is it beat up?
Yeah, well, particularly because at least with the adventure, you have to keep going back to the end to get the monsters. And I got the box at the con, so it wasn't like I could make photocopies or anything like that in advance.
Yeah. Yeah, mine.
Did you run it at PAX?
No, I ran it at Kineticon.
Kineticon, okay.
Yes, I think I've run 4 games. And mine is also getting some folds in it. It's okay. It'll last a good long time. Because I also don't plan on using it nonstop, right? Like I'm only going to use it when I run it, and then I'll probably put it away. But for now, it's getting a little worn. But that's okay,
Any other materials issue, or can we get into the content?
Let's get into the content.
All right. Rules book or adventure? Let's do the rule book, because I think the adventure will take up most of our time.
Sure. The rules book is meant to be read first anyway, so...
Oh, I didn't read it in that order. Darn it. I failed. I was more interested in the story, so I read the adventure first.
I hear you don't ever read the rules anyway, so, whatever.
I just make it up as I
always let one of my players do it. You tell me what the rules. I don't know what the rules are.
Well, I mean, for me, I there's only a few things I went in detail on because, of course, I've been playing the playtest and keeping up, and I read the PDF, and so, I already, by the time I got the starter box before, I got the PDF before I got the starter box, so, of course, I didn't have to really focus on the starter set.
By the PDF, you mean the D&D basic?
The basic, the download.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Not a PDF of this book.
I don't have a premium WotC Play Network store close by, so I couldn't get the starter set on July 3rd. I had to wait till the 15th or whatever.
And I suppose in the interest of full disclosure, I received my copy as a review copy, so I did not pay for mine.
Yeah, I paid for mine.
I paid for mine.
I got a review copy, and I got a one for free for running.
She's got 2 copies.
Yeah.
She's totally biased.
I gave the other one to my brother.
For the record, I did buy almost a dozen.
Oh yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
saw you saying something about that. You bought like 12 of them, and then
I bought
and
I bought
gave them
11
away.
and I gave them away. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Which is one thing, I don't know if we want to talk about the price, but I think it's an important topic. That, I think it's $20 in retail and it's like $13 on Amazon. And that's cheap enough that I'm willing to go ahead and buy a bunch of them and give them out to people that I know are interested but not necessarily playing, and say, even if it ends up in their basement, it was $13.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Where if it was double that, if it had a lot of extra material and cost a lot more, I probably wouldn't have done that.
If you give away 10 copies and only get 2 new groups started out of that,
Yeah.
like you've still, I mean,
I think we gave we did give away 12 because Michelle bought one for some friends of ours, and they're playing with their kids and putting it on Facebook, and it's a delight to watch. So that one alone was worth it.
Right.
I'm gonna say that you are single-handedly responsible for saving the role-playing community.
Thank you.
Way to
I
go.
don't think I can take credit for that.
You are a boon to the community.
I don't think so.
So, the starter set rule book. It is 30 some pages. What, 32 pages.
Yeah, 32 pages.
32 pages, 4 chapters, how to play, combat, venturing, spellcasting, and an appendix with conditions, which is just a 1-page appendix of conditions.
Yep.
A good chunk of the book is just spells.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I would probably say the next big chunk is probably combat, right?
No.
No, the
I guess
combat's
wouldn't say
actually
that.
only like 4
I
pages.
see 4
Yeah.
pages combat. I see 8 pages on how to play. And I thought they did a really nice job of sort of.
Yeah, it's 5 pages for combat.
I feel like they did a nice job of sort of breaking down on the how to play, of making it simple to understand, but not being completely boring for somebody who's been playing a long time. Like, I wasn't bored reading it, but I
Right.
felt like I could have handed this to somebody who's never played before, and they would have been able to read it and figure out what's going on. I thought they walked a nice balance there.
Yeah, for me, it's like one disclaimer that I'm going to put out there is I'm not a new D&D player, a new D&D DM, so I can't even begin to think about what this means to somebody who's just opening it up for the first time. But I know, as somebody who has played D&D a lot and who played the playtests since some of the earliest days, it was still really fun to read and kind of see, because it's different than the playtest was. And I really enjoyed kind of reading and seeing and feeling like now I've got a solid version of D&D in my hands.
Right. I did see somebody posted online that they had tried to play the starter set because they had never played D&D before, and they still weren't quite sure how to run the very first combat.
Right.
The play examples weren't good enough
Extensive?
for them to understand how to actually do things. Like, they understood. I think I'm talking about the same post Tracy
Yeah,
is,
right.
but I think
There's one post I got
they
around.
understood logically what was supposed to happen. Like, in their mind, they could think of it, but actually sitting at the table and trying to do it, it was hard to keep up and know where to look in the book and all that, and to actually make it seem coherent. It was a mess.
It's kind of an interesting. So one of the other sort of interesting slices in time that this comes in is because I think Mike Merles responded with, or somebody responded with, well, we expect that they'll learn more online.
Right.
Like they can see actual play on YouTube, and they can, if they want to spend any time. And there's been a lot of discussion about, is that a suitable way to do it or not? And I think everybody can kind of speculate, and nobody really knows, and every group is going to be different anyway.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that because of the pervasiveness of the internet and how it's affected this hobby, we can't compare this to the release of previous ones, even 4E, because so
but
much.
then
has changed.
so I agree, but so isn't it then a little disingenuous to tout on the box everything you need to play is in here, but then if you really want to learn how to play and you're brand new, you got to go online.
It was true for me, right? Like everything I needed to play was in the box. I opened it up.
Right.
I very specifically ran my first game with
Right.
nothing but what was in
But
here.
so
including
then
dice.
that brings up the question: who's the target audience?
Well-
Is
Right.
the target audience people who already play D&D?
Right.
I think I would argue that this was an easier introduction to D&D than anything else that I've seen.
That's probably
You know, what? Is
I'm
it
not
perfect?
arguing that. I'm sorry. I don't. I think I'm coming off a little harsh in this, but I just,
No,
I think,
yeah. I mean,
if they're going to point people online, that should be to help them, not as a, well. Yeah, you have to do this if you're a first-time DM and you want to prep, because our book just doesn't quite go far
or
enough.
have that integrated into the product itself, which
Right.
it wasn't.
Yeah, right. Like watch actual play videos and then
Right.
offer you.
But we
It was an
as a
afterthought.
community have been learning to play D&D, when in our youth or whatever later in life, for way longer than this product has been out, and we did it with with far inferior products, and we seem to muddle through okay, and without the help of the internet.
Right. Those poor bastards with the old first edition.
Except, and that's mostly true, except that I know a lot of people talk about, and even Wizards of the Coast talked about for a while, about how they didn't expect people to pick up a box and learn to play D&D. They always expected somebody would introduce them.
Right.
But the starter box is not meant to have somebody like a big sibling, an older sibling, or someone introduce you to D&D. It's supposed to be itself. You pick it up in Target and you go home and you play D&D.
I don't think there's ever going to be a product that can replace an experienced person at the table to help teach everybody else what to do.
I disagree. I don't think you can do it for this price. For this game, right? Like the thing is, like, how many different board games do we buy that nobody else has ever taught you how to play? And you sit down and you read the instructions, and you have lots of pieces, and you sit down and you play, and you manage to figure it out, even if no one teaches you how.
About half.
Well,
the other
it's
half
still more than zero.
But the other half you screw up half the time, and then you figure out how to do it better the next time. Which is how
or
you
you
learn
do what
this
I
too.
do.
Which that's how you learn how to play D&D.
Well, you do what I do, which is you go to YouTube and watch somebody actually play and go, oh, that's how you play. Right. And that could very much be this way.
Right.
I mean, again, I have no idea what what the majority of new players will do when they open this box. And I have a friend of mine, the one that I was talking about, played with his kids, and he wrote a really good review. And he's played D&D before, but like he's kind of just played 4E a few times. And he played D&D a long time ago. And he wrote a pretty good review of what it was like. And he said, yeah, I kind of expected more help out of the box for me to kind of get started playing.
Okay.
And instead, I actually had to sit and sort of read all the rules before I could sit and play.
Yeah,
and then
I don't have that perspective, but I still say this is probably the best starter product we've seen for this game.
Yeah.
For D&D. I've never seen a starter product as good as this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only one that I really kind of had the same experience with was the Redbox and 4E.
4E Redbox.
And the one thing that it had, and I think it was heavily critiqued for it at the time, is it had like the choose your own adventure. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that?
That was modeled after the 1982 Frank Mincer Redbox.
Yeah.
That's why.
What did that have it too?
But that was the original one that had a choose your own adventure style thing, and as it went along, it helped you learn how to play, and then at some point that ended, and then it had character creation, and then in the DM's book, it said, okay, now here's how the game really works. You're not alone. You're with a group, and you DM it. So one of you plays the monsters and all the other people in the world, and your friends will play these other people, and here's how you do that. And then it ran you through the rest of the dungeon, but you were the DM then, and you were running it for your friends.
And there's a problem with that, which is that you're only really going to do that once. Like, in fact, the Redbox had that problem.
That was why. Yeah, that was the big critique. Well, and the fact that you couldn't just take that character and move it over to the other line because there were some errors and stuff. But that's
Yeah. Well, 4E is a difficult addition to do something.
Yeah.
Like that.
Right.
So I my feeling is, again, I only speak for myself and my own opinion, and I don't know any other.
Sure.
I've got a statistical sample of one, right?
But that's all any of us can do, right?
Well, I have one other person who was more new than I was who tried it, and he gave me his experiences. So that's the only real sample set I've. I think that, and the other one we can maybe talk about is comparing it to the Pathfinder beginner box.
Yeah.
Is that it probably could do a little bit of a better job of kind of getting you into what all of this stuff means.
Okay.
Like even one sheet that kind of says, like, these are all the different parts of the character sheet, and this is what they all mean, which is something the Pathfinder set had. And I thought was pretty good. It's like it had a 2-page folio for the character sheet, with the character sheet in the center, and then arrows that said, like, this is, when you attack, this is what you're going to use, and when you defend, whatever.
Yeah. They've
And
had
this
stuff
is
like
what
that
this
in
word
former
means,
PHs too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say that I ran a lot of new people, like some people who were brand new to D&D with this box, and I mean, by and large, they were able to pick up the character sheet pretty quickly. Although sometimes they kept forgetting to add their bonus to attack because they thought they just rolled a die. So we had to keep reminding them about that stuff. But overall, it was pretty good, except for when it came to the spells part.
Yeah.
Sure.
That was.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say one of the difficulties we ran into is because only that the one booklet had the descriptions of the spells. Sometimes there was like contention over both people wanted to read it at the same time and all that other stuff. Like one thing I did like about 4th edition was that everything could be on your character sheet, and I think it could have helped some of the players if more of the information could have been somewhere. But I know also that the character classes make that a little more difficult in this edition.
Yeah, I mean there's kind of another elephant in the room, which is D&D is not meant to be the simplest of RPGs.
Right.
It's got some mechanical depth and some complexity.
And they've built different complexities in classes intentionally, right? Some classes are supposed to be easier to run than others, and maybe you don't hand the wizard to the new player.
Yeah.
Well, if the whole table's new.
No, absolutely, no.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, but
Yeah.
I was actually the cleric, and people were getting confused over the fact that that some things were the reflex or like the save, and other things were the attack.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, there's spellcasting, and that was kind of one of the things that I honed in on, and think that everybody that's going to play this should do is really spend some time understanding the spellcasting system and at least read through the spells so you have a loose idea of what they do. Particularly because the whole idea of what spells spells you've prepared, and spells you're casting are all different, and it's like I get confused.
Yeah,
and I've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, and I don't mean this as like a huge negative or anything. I'm just pointing out problems that we actually did have at the table.
Yeah,
That's
right,
fair.
right, and yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that there's much more they could do with it. I think you're right. Certainly.
Yeah, I mean, there have been versions of pre-gen character sheets in the past where they've actually had the spells, the spell information actually on the back of the sheet or whatever. Yeah. They filled it up with all this other stuff so that you can actually level them up to 5th level just using the pre-gen sheets. So there wasn't probably enough space to do that here. So they made a choice to have one thing and not another thing, and maybe that makes life a little harder.
Yeah. But I guess, I feel like for me, this was a really good way for me to feel like I had a solid edition of D&D in my hands. I just don't know how well it will work for brand new people. But again, so my friend was I'd say relatively critical of it. And then next thing you know, I'm watching post after post after post of his kids having a hell of a time going through fighting goblins.
So it
seemed to work out.
Yeah, just like the first time I played Lords of Waterdeep, you struggle through it the first time, and the next time you're having a blast.
Right. So
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Any other thoughts on the rule book itself or the rules before we get into the adventure?
Well, the conditions on the back is brilliant. It's nice to have that because you just have it sitting there and you don't have to flip through and find them in different pages. So that was a good design choice. And the second thing was sort of related to the adventure. There's lots of stuff in the adventure that could maybe be considered rules.
Yeah.
So, I think the starter set rulebook is not a complete picture of the rules, but I don't think it was meant to be. So that's okay. It's not meant as a criticism, just an informational.
And without getting too much into the adventure, I feel like that was done intentionally. That they're teaching you some of the rules as you play the game.
Absolutely. So I'm sort of trying to contrast that with the whole discussion of, well, is it really for a starter person? Well, maybe the starter set rulebook part of it tries to use language that assumes that you're a new player, but then you see there sort of also is this overarching thing where they kind of are assuming you're a new person, and so some things that are the more difficult concepts they try to walk you through a little more as the DM when you're going through the adventure. So I think that's a positive thing. They at least they put on a good, they made a really good effort at it. I don't know because I'm not a new player. I don't know how successful it is, but they did a really good job of trying.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much in the adventure book that should be in the starter set or the starter rule book. Sorry.
No, I don't mean it like that. I just mean it more like when it gets to a point where a particular rule might be utilized, it'll remind you in the adventure itself. Okay, this was the part that we talked about in the starter rulebook where it had this, and then sometimes it gives tips about how to deal with that in this particular situation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
the one thing that I thought was interesting that's in the adventure book and not in the main book is inspiration. You know, and I guess that's mainly because it's a DM thing. But like I guess I was looking for it and I thought it wasn't in here at all. Mm-hmm. And one reason why is that the character sheet doesn't list it, and I think the printable character sheet online does. And it's a sidebar in this where it's kind of a main rule in the basic, the basic rules.
And I think that may also be a bit of them trying to start simple and add complexity as you go, right?
Or maybe the print runs were different. Like they put a different emphasis on it over time, so hard to say.
All right, shall we get into the adventure?
Sure.
All right. The Lost Mine of Phandelver. Intended to go from levels 1 to 4, is that right?
5.
5.
5?
Yeah.
Does it get you all the way to 5?
Yep.
So levels 1 through 5 in 4 parts. Mike, you've run it. Tracy, you've run it. Somebody tell us, what is the Lost Mine of Phandelver about?
You can go, Mike.
Oh, I don't want to go. Yeah, I don't know.
Should we just say a spoiler?
Goblins.
Spoilers?
Yeah, so spoilers.
Yeah, we're doing
We're going to be spoiling the adventure.
I don't anticipate it to be super spoilery, but be warned.
I'm gonna have.
Do you want me to do the grand overview, and then you can talk about? Okay, so the grand overview is several hundred years ago, some gnomes and dwarves discovered this fantastic mine, and they made a pact that they would both profit equally from this mine. And so the mine was worried, and there was some big sort of well of spells or something, some sort of magical oasis in there that could be tapped. And humans came along, and they also sort of joined in and were trying to do well with this mine. And then some orcs came from the north, and they swept across the whole region, and they killed everyone. And the mine was closed down, and the area was basically deserted for many, many, many years. Mm-hmm. Recently, the area has been expanded into, and it's starting to become more civilized and more populated. And 3 brothers have now, and over the years, the legend of the Lost Mine has sort of been churning around in everyone's sort of collective psyche. And so occasionally an adventurer will go looking for it, and no one has ever found the entrance. It was well hidden, and yada, yada, yada. So it's this big mysterious place with lots of power that no one has now had access to for hundreds of years. Recently, the area is becoming more civilized, and towns are sprouting up, and people are moving in more and more into the area. And it turns out 3 brothers find the entrance to this mine. They realize what they found, and they decide they're going to exploit it and claim it and use it to better the area and for the profit of Phandalin and all that. Phandalin's the name of the town near the area, and all that kind of stuff. And so they go to get equipment. And on the way, and turns out there's a person who is relatively evil who overhears or follows them or is spying on them or something, figures out that they have found something really important and valuable, and basically kidnaps one of them to get directions to this particular mine, to the mine opening. And meanwhile, the party members are hired or know someone, or however you choose to get the party to this area. They are traveling on their way to go to the town, Phandalin, to exchange information. They're escorting a caravan, something like that. You can use any kind of hook.
They're under the employ of one of the dwarves.
Right. And so you get ambushed, and you learn through the first adventure that this particular big bad evil guy has captured one of the dwarves and now has a map to the mine. And so now you have to go well, that's actually part of the second adventure too. Anyway, that's the basic story of it. So you're going to go eventually and find this mine and go in and try to stop the big bad evil guy from taking over. That's the umbrella.
And figure out what
version.
happened to the various dwarf brothers.
Figure out what happened to the dwarves who had found the opening again. Yeah.
Yeah, good. So there's a lot about this adventure that I really like. I don't know how much it's awesome for new people, as we've had that conversation a lot, but there's a lot here that I find really interesting and that I want to dig into. It kind of opens with a more linear story with part 1, then part 2 and 3 suddenly become a lot more sandbox-ish, and then it finishes off, with a dungeon delve, and it becomes more linear, of course, by that point. And so I'm really sort of intrigued to see that. Right, part 1 is hey, these goblins are over here. Let's go take them out and get a clue. Part 2 is really more of a location. Here's the town, and there's some stuff going on in this town and some stories that you might interact with. And you might be introduced to a bunch of other stories that you deal with in part 3. Right, and it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tracy and Mike, who've run it, it seems like part 2 and 3 could kind of go back and forth interchangeably.
Well, I didn't. So I've only run parts 1 and 2.
Okay.
I ran part 1 twice, maybe 3 times, and I've run part 2 only once.
Okay.
And no, I've played. I'm sorry, I ran it twice and played in it once, and then
It just feels like in part 2 you could get a hook for an adventure in part 3, or for a location
Yes.
in part
Yes.
3, run off and do it, and then come
there
back
are
to part
hooks.
2.
Yeah, there are good hooks
Yeah.
that connect all of them together.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think during Kineticon that did happen where some tables got slightly ahead
Sure.
because they ended up following a hook that was in part 3 or so.
And I think I like that because it feels more sandboxy. Like if you want to go through and do everything, you can comb
Yeah.
through this thing with a fine-tooth comb and really get it all. Or you can, follow the natural hooks and go straight to the end, and I'm okay with that too. Mostly because I don't worry about experience points, and so they would.
There's actually an interesting point about experience.
Yeah,
points.
they would be the appropriate
Yeah.
level when they got there for me.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Right.
And that's and Tracy, probably saw this in action too. That's all well and good if you're playing with the same group over a number
Yeah.
of sessions,
Sure.
and not as good if you are playing an organized play event where people are switching table to table.
Yes.
And they're like, wait a minute, where are you? What happened?
Yeah.
There's
sure.
these weird sort of like parallel splinter universes.
I
We
could see
had-
how a sandboxy thing would be problematic in organized play.
Yeah.
We had to keep rebalancing tables depending on which parts of 2 and 3 they had already seen. And I ended up running for somebody who had already played part of it, and they're in the manor. And so fortunately, the person who had DM'd this group before was one of the players in this game, and he could tell me what things they had or hadn't done. Because there are things that if the players do X even at the very beginning when they first enter, that can affect things later.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there's some weird, and you talked about the first adventure being linear, but there's actually a lot of different things that can happen in that first adventure
Yeah.
because it's pretty, it's not a sandbox, like it's a bunch of goblin caves, but the way you can approach that is so different.
Sure.
So I ran a home game, and Michelle, my wife, played a character who tamed one of the 3 wolves that attacks you, and it was kind of a major NPC that kind of saved them at the end and stuff. And she adopted it. So then she goes to the next group, and the other group, she's like, well, I have this pet wolf that's following me around. He doesn't do anything. He just hangs around. And they're like, what's that? And he says, this is the wolf from the cave. Like, no, we killed those 3 wolves. Like, oh my God, we'd never have those wolves with us. So you get these sort of weird discontinuities. Even if you have clean breaks in the adventures, there's these discontinuities about what happened from adventure to adventure.
and it's funny because I hear conversation that makes me think this would not be a great organized play adventure, and yet on the other hand, there are things in it that make me feel like are there largely for organized play.
Like what?
So there's multiple points where you have the opportunity to be invited into an organization,
Yeah.
and I feel like that is them introducing the factions that are going to be in the Adventure League
Yes.
stuff. On the other hand, I really like it for my home game too, because I mean that's an awesome story reward that can happen from what the players are doing. Hey, you're now a Harper, or you're now this, or you're now that, right? That's really cool, and I think it has value in a non-organized play system or setup or whatever. But it felt very much to me like, oh, that's why they have like 6 different introductions to different organizations that you could stumble into being invited into, is because of the factions in the organized play.
Yeah, and when I ran it at Kineticon, we were given DMs were given the list of the factions with the descriptions to help with the players, and we were told that, you know, if they decide to make this an Adventures League character, that they probably should have a faction at some point before they left the con. I don't know if that's like official all the way through, because it wasn't quite exactly run by like RPGA or anything, but yeah.
Yeah,
and it's really hard to say because we don't really know very much about organized play at this point. I mean, we know quite a bit, but we don't know enough to know how important it'll be to have a faction. I mean, apparently, I mean, that could be someone's opinion who thinks, oh, it's going to be really important, but maybe it's not really that important. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think even if it is fairly important, it's going to be the kind of thing where if they jump into the adventure and say, oh, what's your faction? And they're like, oh, I don't have one. Then they'll say, here's a list, pick one. You know, it's not going to be a huge deal, you know? Yeah. But I feel like this is a nice, like, because none of them are like super easy to do. Like, it's not just you interact with this person and you do a quest for them. No, it's you interact with a person, you do a quest for them in a very specific way, and then return to them. And there's an opportunity that one of you could be invited to join this organization or whatever. And so I feel like you could run through it, and maybe one player over the course of the whole adventure might be invited into an organization. But if they are, like, that's just a little nugget in the adventure that I think adds to the story of a larger campaign and into the characters that could be really cool.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's suited for home play and not as much.
That may be, and I'm looking at this whole thing as somebody who doesn't generally do organized play. The only time I ever do is maybe once or twice a year when I sit down at Gen Con. You know, so I'm not really an organized play person, but as somebody looking to run an adventure in my home, I'm really interested in this one.
And it's got, for those who like, I know Sam hates the Forgotten Realms, but for those of us who like the Forgotten Realms or you know, tolerate it.
Mike Shea spreading lies since 2015.
That the factions are kind of a neat way to tie a little bit deeper into Forgotten Realms. So even if you are playing in a home game where they're not quite part of this whole organized sort of system, they are still kind of a hook to kind of say, you know, I'd kind of like to know more about these crazy Zhentarim folk.
At the same time, though, I don't feel like, as a Realms person, I thought it was fairly light-handed on the Realms lore.
Yes, it is, but it's enough to kind of say, well, there's more here than we're saying. But
I also feel like it's like you could say, hey, you were invited to join, you know, the Harpers or whatever, and you could do that in your own setting and just, you know, make up this organization that kind of fits the vague description that they include in here that is all you really need.
Yeah, I mean, they do make it very explicit that this adventure is written to be in the Forgotten Realms and it has this, that, and the other thing, but you're right. It's not so oppressive.
It's real portable.
It's not so oppressively done or oppressive isn't the wrong word. It's not so heavy-handed that you have to run it in the realms.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and like, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, you know, I mean, any DM could take any adventure and translate it, you know, for the most part, translate it to their. But this would be very easy to, even with the factions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even like the part 2, they describe it kind of more as a Wild West town rather than saying this is the Forgotten Realms and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I mean, as a Realms person, none of the locations being discussed are anything. I mean, other than you know, you're coming from Waterdeep, right? Obviously, I know Waterdeep, but like Phandalin and the mine of Phandelver and all that kind of stuff, none of that was on my radar before.
Yeah, Neverwinter is on there.
Yeah, as a place that's nearby, but not an actual location for the adventure. Right?
So I think you start from Neverwinter, don't you? Or
yeah, you're accompanying the caravan from Neverwinter
Was
to
it Neverwinter? Okay.
Phandalin.
I
Yeah.
thought it was Waterdeep. But
That's whatever. I mean, it's not part of the adventure. It's just a name. In the adventure, if you don't know anything about it, it's just the name of a town.
because it's
But it is, not to get all
Waterdeep's
producty.
not too far
Yeah.
off the map to the south. So
Right. Not to get all producty, but it is kind of a nice hook into whatever they're going to do with the realms.
Right.
It's just, oh, hey, I know that place. That was in the starter adventure.
and that brings up an
Right.
interesting point because what I really want to do is I really am interested in this adventure and want to run this as my first 5th edition adventure. Do you think the levels would be set up as such that I can run this as my first adventure and then go into Tyranny of Dragons, or are we going to start back over at first level?
Well,
Well, we'll have
didn't
to see when
Wolfgang Bauer
Tyrion
kind of answered that, right?
Did he?
Didn't he say in the
Did he
interview
say that in my interview?
that the Tome Show conducted an interview with Wolfgang Bauer and Steve Winter? In case you haven't listened to it yet, I think that didn't they say, or maybe it was Mike Merles who mentioned it, but on one of those they said Tyranny of Dragons starts at level 1, but if you've already gone through something like Phandelver, you can easily just skip the first portion of that, and it doesn't cut very much out. I distinctly remember hearing that somewhere or seeing it somewhere from an official, it wasn't just somebody guesstimating, it was an official
Somebody who knew.
thing. Yeah, someone who was in the know. So it does start, I think, at level 1, so you wouldn't necessarily, you'd have to cut some things out, I think.
Okay, I can.
At least
I can
that
live
was
with
my
that.
impression. Yeah. But Tyranny of Dragons is such a huge, that's the 2 books, and you'd only be dropping, the first little portion of the
Well,
first book.
I will.
so-
I will. When we get to reviewing Tyranny of Dragons, which we're going to be really busy the next 2 or 3 months
I
with
know.
all the core books coming out and Tyranny of Dragons. But I want to look at all of them. But I think we're just going to be really swamped. So,
But
yeah, that's something that we'll have to look at when it comes out.
One thing about can you go from this to the other because the flat math is there. So I'll give one other instance where this kind of mattered, which is when I have a personal opinion about level 1 characters in D&D in 5th edition, which is that they're a little squishy. They're kind of delicate.
Well, and that's because of the whole levels 1 through 3 being the sort of apprentice starter levels,
Yeah,
right?
but ones in particular, right? Like
Yeah.
1 through 3 is one thing, but getting killed with 2 goblin arrows.
yeah.
That's something else. So I really didn't want people's first impression of D&D 5th edition to be, wow, my character died with 2 goblin arrows. So I went ahead and said, you start at 2. Because you don't get a whole lot at 2, and it wouldn't totally imbalance the whole rest of it. And 1 is so fast in experience gain anyway that it's going to balance out over the long time anyway. So I wonder whether or not you could kind of do the same thing with Tyranny of Dragons, which is if you started, I don't know if you'd start at 5th, though. That's like, it's meant to be a 1 to 16, I think.
Yeah, but I wonder if you couldn't, because of the flatter math and whatever. I wonder
Yeah.
if because as somebody again
probably
as somebody
could.
who doesn't use experience points, right?
Right.
Could I have him do part 1 at first level of Phandelver, and then part 2 second, part 3 third, part 4 fourth, and then they're starting? I guess they would still be starting at 5th, wouldn't they? At the end of Phandelver?
Yeah, and you probably could. But that's pretty far off. Like, that's, 5 levels is a lot different than being 2 or 3 levels off. So I don't know. We'll have to see when it comes out.
Yeah, I wonder if yeah, well, we will. So I guess there's not much point in really digging into it now, because we'll be able to figure that out when we actually have a product in our hands.
Yeah.
Which shouldn't be too long now, right?
No, I got a note from my game store saying they already had the organized play part of it.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's clearly
But,
parts of it are out.
But bringing up XP, one of the things I thought was kind of interesting in the adventure is they do XP at least 2 different ways.
Yeah.
The first part of the adventure is you get XP for completing that section, and then at least second part, and I think after that you get XP for encounters.
Yeah, I actually right. That was interesting to me, and also that hosed up my organized play sessions because they skipped a lot of fights in the final one, and there's kind of supposed to be 3 by the third one,
Right.
and they weren't. They were like 300 experience shy, and I'm like, guess what? You just got 300 experience for a quest reward. Well done. And because I'm like, I don't want them to be underpowered when they go to the next group.
Well, and it actually, I mean, what's nice is that it says as you're going into parts, they should be at about this level by this point. And if they're not, give them the experience or give them this reward or have them go do something else or whatever. And I'm like, this is just them moving closer and closer to what I'm already doing anyway, which is give them the level when it's appropriate to the story and forget about the whole encounter thing or whatever, you know?
Well, and I kind of think that they only put the XP per creature killed or whatever they have in there as training. You know, if the DM decides, okay, this is the other way to do this, you know what I'm saying? It's sort of one of those training things. They've got you on training wheels. So at the first part, they just say, okay, if the players did this or when they finish this part, just give them this amount, because you don't have to worry about calculating how it was calculated. But by the time you get to the end, they want you to be worried about, or at least thinking about, how much experience is provided by doing certain things and killing certain creatures.
And I think that's actually good. I noticed that as well, that you start the you know, in part one, it's you have this encounter, they defeated these things, given this amount of experience. By the time you get to the end, it's they defeated these things. Look it up in the monster section and figure out how much experience it's worth. And they sort of walk you through the steps of being able to figure this out on your own. So when you're done, you know, maybe you've got a good handle on that.
Yeah. And isn't there a section that actually says if they're not this level, you can design some, you know, throw some extra goblins or something? I can't remember. Maybe I'm thinking of the... Yeah. Just to get them up, so that if you want to do it and have them earn it per creature, then you can do that, or you can just award it to them.
And I also like the fact, you know, Tracy, you mentioned that there's quest rewards and that kind of stuff as well, and I like that idea because it is emphasizing that you can give experience point awards for more than just killing stuff. Right, that there are story points that you can achieve and still get the reward for it, and I like that. I like the idea of encouraging alternative things to get rewarded. And I mean, it's D&D, so it's a combat game. I'm okay with getting XP for killing stuff too, but it's not just killing stuff, you know?
Right. Right. And yeah, my feeling is like I'm immediately going to go to just awarding levels at certain moments.
No, it's not a question.
Like I'm done doing math.
With
experience points.
I'm over that already.
Yeah.
The only reason I sometimes think otherwise is, you know, I want to. Part of me gets immature and vengeful and wants to punish players who don't show up and haha, you didn't get experience and now you're further behind. And then I calm down and realize, no, we're all adults and we come when we can. It's okay.
Yeah, right. I want to do everything I can to get them to come to my game. Not the opposite. I never want to give them a reason not to come.
Right.
You could use the inspiration point system for that.
Yeah. Right.
But anyway, anything else on the adventure? I
really like it.
I thought it had some really nice twists and turns.
Yeah.
I felt like the story went in some interesting places. They also very purposely set it up to have a future. Like, this is not an entirely self-contained story. Not only are these different organizations that you can end up joining over the course that could lead you to other things, but there are villains that may escape, you know, and become things later on and become recurring, or there's others, you know, they give you hints at other larger plots afoot, if you will. So I feel like it is intended to be here's 5 levels to start a campaign. Now enjoy the next 15.
Right.
Well, I think that it has some very sort of traditional, you know, that it's got some traditional elements in it, like, you know, accompanying a caravan. And fighting goblins, you know, that's the traditional sort of first through second level.
And I will point out, for Mike's sake, it has both dungeons and a dragon.
Yes, it does.
But I think, you know, that it's, I think they did a good job of sort of adding lots of traditional elements in there to make it, you know, sort of this is a horrible word, the expected D&D experience,
archetypical.
You know, the archetypal, D&D experience, because I think and at the same time it has some new and interesting things in there, you know, spoilers, the whole the cave, what is it called, wave what is it, Wave Echo, yeah, the way it gets its name is really interesting and fun, and you can do fun things with that, and I think there's some good elements in here to teach a new DM how to run sort of even with the very first the Cragmaw Cave. It has some interesting elements that you get practice, you know, describing different things and letting the characters try things and figuring out how to do those. And it seems simplistic, but if you are a newer, maybe not brand new, but if you're a newer player even or a newer DM, that kind of thing really helps. And the fact that it's got traditional elements in it also helps because it's recognizable tropes, you know,
And at the
pit
same
traps,
time-
snare traps, things like that.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Although I would say that I think sometimes they were a little too traditional. We don't have to talk about it too much here, but
I don't disagree.
it's not really an adventure that I would run if I didn't have to. I mean, so the Goblin Cave was a lot of fun, and the part that you're talking about, Sam, is definitely an interesting thing, but it's just so overwhelming to me. Like, I did a blog post on my blog and just listed the named characters, and the male list is at least 2 to 3 times longer than the female list.
And unnecessarily. I made note of
Yeah.
that as well.
Yeah.
It was pretty glaring to the point that I'm like, half of these characters easily could have been female. There's no reason they had to be male.
Well, so let me clarify then. When I'm talking about traditional things, I don't mean traditional as in the way that D&D has always been done. I mean things like goblins
it
at
hits the
first
iconics.
level and caravans and I agree with you. It was pretty obvious.
I don't know if I noticed because it was so glaring, like some novels that we've read recently, or if I specifically noticed because I knew I would be discussing it with you, Tracy.
Yeah, I know.
But I did notice that very, very clearly. That I'm reading through it and I'm like, why does this character have to be a male just like that character was a male, and that like I can think of about one character that needs to be the gender that character is for the story, and everybody else doesn't have to be. And that's something easy to change.
Right, as long as it doesn't feed into other adventures, which was one of the
and the addition to this point and the adventure to some degree, as I look through the artwork and whatever, it makes progress on where D&D has been in those regards.
Right.
But yeah, I mean there are certain things that could have been better balanced.
Yeah, and I'm not saying the adventure was horrible or anything. Like, we definitely had a lot of fun with the goblins.
Yeah.
And because that was the main part I got to actually play, so I know for sure we had fun there. We had not as much fun in the manor, but that's fine too. Like, there just wasn't as many places to interact. Most of my players kept a goblin alive to interrogate, so that constant interaction was a lot more fun for them, where we didn't get that as much in the manor.
Sure.
But, like, yeah, I don't think it's a horrible adventure. It's not... It wasn't in keeping with some of the things that they said that they want from D&D now.
Sure.
But the artwork was great, I thought.
Yeah. And Sam, you mentioned how much it's a good adventure for starting DMs or starting groups or whatever. At the same time, I feel like there's a lot of cool stuff here for an experienced DM that you can even ramp up to another level. You know, I'm pretty comfortable with the game, but there's still a lot here. Like, it's not simplified. There's all these unique and interesting things that I can pull into my game and you know, explore a little more than maybe I would if I was new and be like, okay, well, this is a thing and now let's move on, you know. I'm more willing as a more experienced DM to say, yeah, let's sort of delve into that and I'll make it up and go. I think it's really good in terms of balance in that way, right? I think it can play to the newer DM, but it can also, there's a lot there to do as an experienced DM.
Right, and so I think that the takeaway from that is this adventure does a lot of things right in terms of showing how certain elements of the game that you kind of think of as part of D&D, how they fit into this edition. And so for that, in that way, right, in that way it talks to experienced DMs, but it also goes a long way towards trying, at least I've only really played around with the first part, though I've read the rest of it, but, you know, at least the first part is pretty decent in terms of trying to get a new DM to understand, well, here's how this sort of thing works, play around with it and try to get it to work so that it's fun for your group.
But even just this description of how to do the traps on the trail was great.
Yeah, exactly.
You like how, not to be overly spoilery, so people be warned, you like how they try to freak you out in the last part for experienced players? They try to freak you out by making you think there's a beholder in there? Right? I mean, there's a point where you can find out about there's some floating eye creature
Yeah,
with
it's
tentacles.
a spectator, right?
Well, yeah. So that's what the creature
that's the
is.
spoiler part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can actually run into an NPC who like warns you, oh, there's this monster in this other area, and that's why they never go in there. And it's this floating orb thing with eyes
With
stalks all over
tentacles,
it.
yeah.
And, whatever. And you know, I could see a group of 4th level players.
Yeah, they're like, we're done. We leave.
What? No. You know, that's brilliant.
I think
love
not.
it. So
You'd have to be clear, like, well, it only has 4 eye stalks.
No. I like the whole idea of let's throw the experienced players into a tizzy, you know, and with this really iconic thing, right? I mean, beholders are iconic D&D, so let's throw that at them, and then at the same time defy their expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I found so much like you guys were saying. Like, I really like the adventure because it does feel like a simple, straightforward adventure. But what I've noticed is playing with an experienced group, all of us were still having a really good time with it.
Yeah,
and you know, it's a fun, even though it's very, particularly the first adventure, which you know I've run twice, and I don't know how many more times I want to run it. But you know, it's so straightforward. Of like, yeah, you're guarding a caravan. Caravan gets attacked by goblins. You go to the goblin cave and you beat on them and their boss. And it's so, you know, normal it's so typical for a D&D adventure. But it's still like a lot of people are like, how do you know, what do we do with the wolves? And you know, how do we, you know, which way do we go? And how do we negotiate with them for hostages and all this sort of fun stuff that has changed in both of the times I've run it. And I think the other 3 adventures have a lot of freedom in them to do different things. Like, you know, I think, Tracy, you were talking about the second adventure or the second dungeon not being quite as dynamic from an NPC perspective. But when our group ran it, they allied with the Nothic that's there. And it started sending them off on quests, and they ended up giving the glass staff to it so it could go seek, you know, become its wizardly way, you know, go back to its wizardly ways.
Right.
So there was a lot of interesting sort of stuff that happened in that group.
And there is like Droop or whatever.
Yeah, right. Although, yeah, my group never even went to him. So yeah, that's what's interesting. Is like, you know, I think every time. It feels to me like there's enough in this that you could run it actually a multiple times and kind of get different things out of it each time.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
The other thing I want to say about the whole starter set is that to me this is a great way to package up D&D to bring to conventions and things like that. Like, I don't want to bring 3 giant core books with me everywhere I go, but you know, I can take these 2 thin books and some pre-gens. And off I go. And I have enough monsters that I could run my own thing. I also have enough dungeons that I could turn them 90 degrees and shake everything up, and no one would know that it's the same dungeon I ran before. And it feels like a nice compact version of D&D. I always like that. I like that with the red box too. That it was like a nice way to carry around a version of D&D that wasn't complete by any means, but had all the components I needed to run a D&D game. So
You mentioned 2 more things that I wanted to mention that I was really pleased with. One of the things you mentioned was pre-gens, because I feel like I like that they built story into the pre-gens that ties to the adventure, even if it's fairly light.
that was a big deal.
Yeah, because I mean the pre-gens don't have to be artificially hooked, you know, with, you know, you're approached and you're hired to do this thing, let's just get into it, because they've got a natural hook within their background. To you know, just in the traits, bonds, flaws, you know, that sort of section. There's just each one has just a little something that connects into something else in the story.
But let me interrupt you for a second and say, if you're a DM who's thinking about running this, make sure you read those pre-gens, because if you don't, you don't know what the hooks are, and you can really pull on those hooks if you know what they are. If you don't even know they're there, it's really tough. And because the book really, as we said earlier, really only mentions things like, you know, inspiration and traits and flaws as a little sidebar in the, you know, in the adventure book, it doesn't really prompt you to go read, you know, the NPC sheets. But I suggest everybody do that.
Absolutely. And then the other thing that you brought up was the glass staff, which reminded me of magic items. The way they handle magic items as an example in this adventure for how magic items are going to work for the 5th edition, I think is awesome. Like, this is the way I've been trying to kind of doing magic items for a while now. You know, there is no I'm looking at page 48 here, where in the treasure section, and you don't have just a +1 mace. You have Lightbringer,
Right.
which happens to be a +1 mace, but it's got this story behind it.
Right.
And these other little quirks that it has as well. So the magic items matter, and I really like the way they've done that. Like, I don't think there's a single magic item that's not named, except maybe the Wand of Magic Missiles,
Which is still a really kick-ass wand.
It has a lot of cool
It's
stuff.
like the most powerful wand of magic missiles I can think about.
So, no, I mean, I'm really excited to see the way they've introduced magic items here, because it's exactly the way I want to see them handle magic items.
Yeah.
I think I've talked about everything I want to talk about. Anybody else have anything to talk about? Because we're at an hour 3.
There's one thing I'd like to say.
Yes.
So when we ran, there was this man had brought his daughter with him, and she didn't want to play first. She was just like, I'll just watch. So the DM gave her a character sheet and said, hey, anytime you want to just, start playing, feel free. Within 5 minutes, she was talking, trying to plan things with the rest of the table. Within 15, she was playing. By the end of the she kept playing, I think she played at least 4 sessions. By the end of the weekend, I saw her walking away with a starter set box under her arm.
Awesome.
Nice.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sam, Mike, any last thoughts?
I really, I really like it. Yeah, I think it's great, and I'm happy I bought it. I'm happy to give it to people that I like, and I think it's a really fun package.
Awesome.
My last thought is it's cheap enough for you to go buy it, and if you're interested at all in what 5th edition is going to bring, this is a pretty good little package that shows you what 5th edition is going to bring, and it's different from getting a basic D&D PDF from online and printing it. It's got really nice art. It's a pretty good production. They have better editing than many of the 4E books. If you're a 4E player, and it it's just a nice little kit, and I recommend getting it if you're interested at all. If you're not interested, then you're probably not
You're
still
not
listening to this podcast. So, yeah. Well, I mean, so some 4E players might have not liked what they've heard or seen or whatever about this edition, and if you're a 4E player and if you're at all curious, $15 or $20 is not too much to spend, or $12, like I got mine off of Amazon.